Right. So as always, if anything resonates with you, keep it. If it doesn't, let it go. I've been having a look at all the what we've done so far, because I know it's a little bit nebulous up to this point, and it was nebulous for a reason. So because I wanted to just see where it goes without trying to have any goal or anything like that. But what did come to me today, this morning, was where we're going and what we're pointing towards. All of the stuff that we're looking at, love, different ways of that, the belief systems, trust issues, everything that we've been covering and been looking at, is for me starting to point once again to the shift.
Yes.
So now when I say the shift, there's a couple of things there that we need to just have a look at quickly, because there's different ideas and different ways of people or what people are considering at the shift, or ways to describe it. So a lot of people are talking going from 4D to 5D. Now, from one perspective, which is that in the 3D space, we got three-dimensional space, but we add the fourth of time. So that's why we say we're going from the fourth dimension, which is space and time, and then the perception of moving into the first dimension,
Which is no time.
which is basically beyond time.
Yeah.
But there's also a couple of other things there. So if you look at like the mathematical or scientific way of dimension, or what they describe as dimensions, the dimensions, the fourth dimension is a very different thing if you look at that. So there we're looking at like, well, the closest that we can get to is the Klein bottle. So I don't know if you, well, we'll start with a Mobius strip. Do you know what the Mobius strip is? So if you take a piece of paper, just a stream of paper, you cut them and you flip them around, you'll always be on the outside. So like a twist in itself, so a twist within or upon itself, so you're always on the outside, so it has no volume. Now all that stuff you're gonna have to go search and look up. I can't remember. And when it gets to like higher mass and all that, yeah, not my gig. But like if you're looking from a fourth dimensional space, mathematically, then the fourth dimension is complete, is the level above us. So if you got one dimension is a dot, two dimension is a flat line. So a lot of people use the idea of the flatlanders, or if you just pretend that you can only see in a flat line, so that you only got two directions. But there's the time dimension comes in on the second already as well. So if you're looking at a plane straight on, and if you're just looking at that, what you're going to see is when something moves past, the 3D object moves past, you'll see like a dot, and then like a longer line and a longer line, and then no line,
The dot again.
and then a dot again. So it's like, because you can only see what's coming past, like if you just had a little slit. Or the other way they describe it is like a cat walking past a hole in the fence. So if you don't know what a cat is, then you'll just see like head and then body and then tail. And then all of a sudden it will go the other way around. So that's all, you can just have that little slit that you're looking at. So for you to understand it, you actually need time for that thing to move. And you need memory to have to remember head, body, tail. And then when it comes back, head, body, tail, It's like, okay, that must be a cat or whatever, call it a cat. If the fence falls down, you can immediately see the whole cat. You don't have to like see it in sections. So in the third dimension, if we look at fourth dimension, we can't perceive fourth dimension. We can only tell it through time. So that's why we need time for the fourth dimension to move through so that we can see and perceive whatever that is. So that gets like higher grade and complicated very quickly. But if you want to have a look at the Klein bottles and dive down into dimensional space, I think they also call it sitter space or whatever, especially if you go into theoretical physics and string theory and all kinds of stuff.
What would you say would be the spiritual explanation of the dimension? Not the physical, not the
yeah, not the mathematical or the physical or the like.
spiritual one.
Yeah. Okay, so the spiritual one, I would say, that's why I prefer densities.
Yeah.
So, like, what is the densities? What's the next density? So when I say 3D, I mean third density and not third dimension, just to make it a little bit easier. Why this keeps coming up for me is because it feels imminent. Now, when I say it feels imminent and that we're close to it or that we're in it, it's very difficult to always tell, because the instant change on the cosmic level can take a second or a couple of thousand years.
Yeah.
So theoretically, the shift that we're going through should be in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Apparently, it started around about the 80s already, so we're quite a way in. And we might have between 70 and 100 years, or some say even 700 years to complete the phase. But the way I feel about or see it is like the roller coaster going up the track. So it goes very slowly and it like starts off quite far, then goes very slowly, and there's almost comes to a dead stop for a moment. And then the next moment is like all hell breaks loose and we're on the ride. So I'm kind of getting that feeling that we are getting kind of close to the top.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at that, there's a whole bunch of things that's pointing me towards that. And that would be basically AI development, all the exponential technologies, not just AI, but robotics and nanotech and
it's actually the
quantum
level of consciousness of the planet.
Yeah,
quantum. They're able to connect to make and build this type of technology.
Yeah, of course, consciousness is connected to the collective consciousness, includes all of that.
Yeah.
So the faster the tech goes, the wider our perception or our consciousness is growing.
Yeah.
The more we plug in, the more experiences, the awakening experiences. So the whole thing with the psychedelic like boom at the moment, there's a whole bunch of people plugging in. There's about a lot of natural awakenings, like also happening at the same time. AI is really thundering. But all of that can be very confusing and it can feel very scary and we can hit a bit of a wobble just energetically as well, because at the same time there's also the energetic shift that comes with the consciousness shift. So, and then you'll have acceleration of basically what's happening in the world today, Trumpy, basically breaking systems.
Yes.
Because it's basically the whole system is breaking fast. and what was supposed to be a slow decline of Western civilization over the next couple of years, couple of decades, as now, now it's like it's getting real very fast. So things are breaking down very quickly and shifting very quickly. So that's a general feeling that I'm getting. So I don't know from your side. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you think?
Yes, exactly. I think the present would be when the general population on this planet gets to be shown that we're not the only living being in this universe. In other words, open contact with other races, other beings. That would be the present. And from there, it's us evolving into a part of the galactic community. So that's, I think it's a long, and it's going to take about 100 years for us to get to that level of technology. That's why we've got the massive boost in technology at the moment. What I think our development is to keep us in line or in the same technological capability as the rest of the world, which is exciting, very exciting.
Yeah, meeting the neighbors. Well, once we meet the neighbors, all bets are off. Because that's like, okay, then it's open season.
Now it's consciousness, it's raising the consciousness of the planet. Not just the people on it, but the whole planet's consciousness is actually raising.
Yeah, so that's part of it. So how do we join our brothers and sisters, our intergalactic brothers and sisters? Like from a state of fear, where we are now.
They're waiting for the fear, the conscious fear on the planet to subside enough so that there be more people open to a new contact. Yeah, at the moment it's still high. People are going to shoot at it. They've got to be conscious of the level of consciousness on the planet. It's slowly climbing. It's definitely climbing, but we're not 100% there.
Well, at the moment, we're getting help from all sides.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of help from like real interdimensional beings.
Yes.
If you're going to start into like talking serious dimensional beings and things like that, where we have others from fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional beings helping us out.
Yeah.
We've got help from the lower realms, from the inner realms. Basically, on a cosmic level as well. So like the energetic shift. So for me, I'm seeing like there's like a band of energy that we're slowly starting to move in.
It's not just our planet.
No.
All the planets, the whole universe is raising consciousness. The whole Milky Way, the whole galaxy is raising consciousness. The whole galaxy is moving through a space in the universe where the energetic level is higher, which causes the planets and the star system to raise its vibration to a high vibration. Now we're in that, they call it the Kali Yuga.
Yeah.
Now the end of the Kali Yuga.
Yeah, apparently Kali Yuga is just ended.
Yeah. Which was the war state, the state of lack of hardship.
Yeah, separation,
yeah,
fear, suffering, all those kind of things.
We passed it. We're going now into the goal. Where there's none of that on the planet. None of that energy will be feasible on this planet. Now it's about love and connection and really connecting with Gaia and everything on it.
Yeah, so that's fourth density. So on fourth density is the level of love.
Yeah.
but then it's an expanded level of love, not the way that we experience it. Okay, so that's why I've been a bit harsh with love and all that.
Why?
Because we need to break those belief systems. So,
About what love is.
yeah, how we see love, what love is, how we define what is love for us, how do we experience it, how do we express it, like, and having a hard look at what is it actually all about, like,
Yeah.
and looking the dark side of it as well, squarely in the face, so that we can have a look at that. And we have to look at ourselves, because beyond all the like Aishua out there galactic stuff, which is part of it, but that will put most people off. I'm trying to just make things simple. But that's also why I've been diving into many rabbit holes, but also just touching onto it and not really diving into it. It's very deep. So, because it's just an overall look at the landscape for now. It's like, where are we? What do we need to do? First question, is this just complete bullshit? This whole, because we've been shifting and changing and the end has been nigh for,
But it's not
it's like since the dawn of time, since the first dude that found a rock to stand up and scream on, like the end was nigh. So, and we were supposed to be beamed up so many times and all that kind of stuff. So there's a whole there's a lot of baggage on there. So from Armageddon and the Four Horsemen and like everything, like chaos and the Great War. So this is part of human consciousness, a very deep part of human consciousness already. But there's also a deep fear that's been ingrained in us. And that's what we're experiencing a lot of, like, where's the fear? What do we need to face? That's why I start with all the negative stuff, so that we can have a look at the negative and the shadow, because the negative is just the polarity once again on that fear-love spectrum. But give me your points of view. Do you feel that there's something is shifting? Is there something shifting in you? Are you ready for it? Do you know where you're going? Have you got any idea? What is the perception and the belief systems and the idea of what this looks like? Are we going rainbows and unicorns and like La La Land? Or is it going to be dystopia or the Borg? Or is it like, where are we going with all this? What are, for you, a deep felt sense of where we go?
Since the lockdown, has your life changed in any way? And would you say for the better or for the worse?
Yes.
I mean, you might have gone through a bad sections where you might have
I
had
actually
some.
enjoyed lockdown, but definitely I think the
Some
whole
more
world
about
is-
the point where you now you will, or there for the better.
yeah.
In your experience.
I've lockdown. That's quite an interesting point. Actually, lockdown and our experience of lockdown.
And I think most people started there already and started their spiritual journey to finding themselves and what makes them happy.
Mm.
And that's a big part of the consciousness change on the planet.
Yeah, I think that was a big one.
So things have changed on the planet. Besides what Trump is doing now.
It's putting the wheel in motion. He's tipping the scale.
Yeah.
But it's on a very different level. First, he's very divisive. So it pulls people into clans, us against them. So, and that's a big thing that we have to overcome, the us against them mentality. Because the moving into the fourth density is about unifying and collective groups coming together and collective minds. So if we look at AI as a visual or a very real look at our collective mind or collective consciousness, because everything that's written and that what's out there is on AI. So it's a storehouse of basically the collective consciousness that we can tap into now. And a lot of the perceived negative also comes into play, because if you look at the lockdowns, it was such a power play, and like we took it. The sheeple just sat in their houses, wore their masks, took their shots. Your boss, near boss, because in uncertainty and fear, anybody that's got half a plan wins. So, in die land van die blindes is die een oor koning.
Yeah.
So, like anybody that's coming up, like even Trump, at least he's got might not be a good plan, but he's got something, somebody's doing something. So, if you're in a state of fear and basically frozen, because a lot of us are just in functional freeze. We're not living fully. We're not experiencing ourselves or expressing ourselves properly. So we're just going along with life, doing the 9-to-5 jobs, doing whatever it takes. Yeah, sitting in the relationships.
Yeah.
Just, and that COVID was a good mirror for that. Because it's very, very difficult to sit with yourself. That's the hardest work you'll ever do, is to actually sit with yourself and face yourself. And a lot of people couldn't handle it. They were freaking out and doing all mad stuff. But what was the perceived immutable ways and cultures that we're in, like everybody has to get up, go to work, sit in the traffic, blah, blah, blah. In a week, it was like, no, you don't have to do that. You can stay at home and you work from there.
Yeah.
But, hello, doom. So like, but before that, nobody would go there.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, well, that's now a thing. We just work from home, no problem. But in there's also, once again, separation. And a lot of people are now freaking out and just hanging to go back to work so that they can skin it a bit or talk to people around the water cooler and have that human connection. So it goes in both ways. So the balance is actually multi-faceted. So there's many facets to the balance on this. So it's not just a seesaw. It's like a dual, it's almost like an umbrella with a couple of strands going out that you have to start balancing from all sides. So the balance is not just the good and evil, the fear, love, the whatever. It's now that and cultural and energetic. So that's why I went through the bodies as well. So it's like having a look at the body. So if you look at, there's at least 6 or 7 spokes on that umbrella that has to be, that we have to start looking at and start balancing and finding place for it. Where are we going? What we're looking at? How's it feeling for you?
Oh, it's a really big question. And it's a hard one for me to answer because, okay, so first off, I've got a lot of questions, one of which is, are we really that important? Because we seem to position ourselves as being necessary somehow, and I'm not so sure that that's actually the case. So I'm curious about what our use is if we are going to be, making massive shifts. And I don't have an answer for that. What I am experiencing myself, and I mean it's a bit ironic because I know part of my work is to help people transition from 3D to 5D, and I don't have my head around it at all. I do know experientially that things are speeding up. And, I'm just listening to everyone talk, and there's like, part of me goes, if I look at the people that I choose to know, I choose to be with conscious people. But there's so few of them when I look at mass populations, whether that's in South Africa or in the States or wherever, that I think it's important not to skewer our perspective because this is what our own interest is or what our own perception is. So I think that the ratio is, I don't think we're all evolving. I think a lot of people are going back and becoming more materialistic and more power hungry and more everything that we shouldn't be doing. And I think COVID is a really good example of it because COVID provided us with the perfect springboard to stay elevated. I mean, what we did to our earth in terms of pollution and cleaning up our act over a really short time, we could have made really significant changes, and we didn't. We didn't learn to change our behavior. So I find it a very interesting, messy. I certainly can't have conversations about different dimensions with most of the people I know. And I know a lot of conscious people. So for me, when we start talking about 4D, 5D, 6D, just watch people's faces glaze over. And I don't know. I mean, all I can talk about is for me, is that at the moment there is so much on offer that if we show up, we will be more than met with assistance, help, opening, broadening of perspectives, stuff coming online, our ability to download stuff. But I don't know how many people that is happening for. And there's some crazy shit going on in the world. I mean, I try and look at it as an opportunity for change and for new things to sort of come online. But I don't know. If we don't, I mean, for me, on some level, I don't know what timelines we're looking at, but if we don't sort out our planet, it's all null and void. Like, like before we can think about moving too much, we have to do something here. And so the only way that I can make sense of it is going that time is going to do this, and people that have managed to cross over or become awake enough will carry on moving, and those that haven't won't. And there will be, I think we're going to live with some people staying in 3D and some people moving on. But I don't think we're going to be able to, it's going to be a done deal. I think it's a bit like Noah's Ark. If you're on the ark, you're going to go, and if you're not on the ark, you're not going to go. So I don't know. It's a very, it's not something I know much about at all. And I mean, I've had some interesting conversations with Susanne, who's a very, very multidimensional human being. She is by far the most awake person that I know and the most connected person to all of this stuff. And I've had some interesting conversations with her about Elon Musk, for instance. She says Elon Musk is a 7D being and that he comes with a lot of goodness and a lot of, yeah, I mean, when she taps into that realm and is getting information from over there, it's interesting to hear, you know, how it translates to us here is a different story. But I don't know. I only have questions. Questions for myself, questions, yeah, timelines. I look around me in the earth. I mean, I think this relationship to Gaia for me is, yeah, because there are all kinds of questions, Ari. Because what happens, I mean, we're going to have to evolve so dramatically on a physiological level to move and not be in our bodies or here. It's like such a radical, that's just a straight upwards evolution. That time frames, in terms of linear chronological time frames, become quite relevant with that. So I don't know. I just have questions, and I'd love some answers. So yeah, I don't feel like I can offer much other than question everything.
The other thing is part of it. It's part of the way. You're questioning everything around the systems, everything.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So, like, because we don't actually have answers,
No.
because we don't know. It's like, it's the unknown. We've got no idea what it is like to be in that level because we don't know.
One last thing on that is that in my direct experience right now, there is the potential to completely undo everything you believe to be true. And what I am knowing from my own personal experience is as fast as I am undoing what I was taught was real and managing to actually embody it. And this is the first time in my life that I'm really understanding what embodiment means. That's when real change happens. That there's something about the relationship between redefining and recreating paradigms, internalizing them and taking them into the body so that they're known on a cellular level, and grounding them down that allows access to very different dimensions. So in my personal work, people that are wanting to be spiritual or healers or do that kind of work, every single piece of information I'm getting about those people is about embodiment. And there's something really interesting for me in that. Because it almost seems counterintuitive, because you'd think we'd be going up and out, not in and down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. The in and down is a big one. Basically, the questions are good. That's what we need. It's not the answer. So like I said before, like we know the answer is 42. So we got the answer. It's easy. What's the questions? How do we get to that? And like you say, that's questioning everything. All your belief systems, like your trust issues, your love, all the stuff that we've been talking about. So, and it seemed like a little bit nebulous, but it's like, that's why I was not intentionally doing it, but I was just seeing where it was going. So like the questions coming up, the people I'm talking to, what we're dealing with, and having a look at the world objectively as well. But like you say, yeah, a lot of people are not on the same train. But it does feel like the train is starting, like there's two trains on different tracks and they've been running together for a long time. But they're slowly starting to veer off. And that space is getting like bigger and bigger. There's still chance for us to jump from the one to the other. But pretty soon that option won't be there anymore. So, and that's interesting.
So can I say one more thing
Yes, please, a lot more stuff.
of my direct experience?
Mhm.
So my direct experience about this has been a little bit like Noah's Ark in terms of there seems to be a necessity to get like what I've seen started with color and almost like the seven rays, with white being what I would call the grout in between the colors. And the intelligence and importance of the frequencies of those colors becoming like a conduit for the passageway across, if that makes any sense. And that in that passageway across, it's very important that we take the animals with us. And that the delivery from here to there, I don't quite understand it. I just know it as a felt sense in what I've actually seen. But colors and the rays seem to be a massive vehicle for how we're going to transition. And that there does seem to be an ask for us to take care of our creatures. Like we can't, in my personal experience, there's been a request for stewardship over Gaia. So whatever we're doing, we're not just moving ourselves. We're moving a lot of the earth, a lot of our plant life, our animals. There's a lot of stuff that needs to come with us. And I mean, I was very interested in the fact that the white in the color was the what kept all matter together. It kind of stopped everything from disintegrating or becoming disparate and separate. So I don't know how that's going to work, but I know in my bones and beings that color and the frequency of color and how it works is going to become more and more important.
Yeah, because if you combine all the colors, we're in the white. So, yeah, that makes sense, but that's very nicely put. If we want to get too esoteric and too out there, it gets very confusing very fast. So, like you say, it's about the embodiment. What can we embody? What is the belief systems, the fears that we still hold? How can we reframe that? And how can we embody that and live that sense of, because we're going to have to take the action as well too, and that's a difficult one for me, especially with taking action. But it's in the action. So how do we action what we know, what we perceive, what we feel, what we sense, to bring that into reality?
I think it starts with us taking back our sovereignty.
Mm.
We have to take control back of Gaia from the people that's been telling us all along how to do it and what to do and how they're going to fix the problems they create. It's for us to say, no, we won't accept plastic anymore. We want alternative to poisoning our planet. But that is part of the conscious rising of the consciousness of the planet.
How do we change our perception of life? To change your mind, to change the world. That's the whole thing. So, and because we all have a certain world in our minds, and that's basically our universe. Through our perception. There's no other way that we can perceive at this level in the 3D. Okay, but that's also opening up. So it's like, can we accommodate that opening of the senses as well? Letting in the intuition, the imagination, the creativity, things like that. And how do we bring that and embody that. That's the practical tools. And this is where I need your input. What's the practical tools to go about this whole thing? How do we prep ourselves? How do we, if we have a lifting consciousness, how do we sustain that? How do we sustain our energy fields? How do we embody it? And obviously that's going to be very specific. There's going to be 8 billion different ways to do that.
Yeah.
So nutrition, what we eat, exercise, blah, 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 the normal standard things. If we're using plastic, no plastic, what is our are we consuming? What are we consuming? What's happening in all the bodies? How do we feed it? How do we get rid of the stuff? Remember the feed, excrete, breed, going through all that. So that was part of like dealing with all of this, from the mental, the emotional, the energetic. How do we feed that? How do we excrete, get rid of the stuff that doesn't serve us anymore? How do we know the difference? And that's, once again, back to the questions. Let's keep asking the questions. Because in the questions and looking at the negative stuff that is obvious for us, then doing the 180 and then looking at the positive stuff and seeing that as a spectrum, and then flipping that around and reframing all of that so that we can get into a position of first openness. Because we're all very cool to go, yeah, collective, all kumbaya, let's do the whole thing. And I mean, that's the whole thing about the gatherings or what I'm trying to do here. And it's not about thousands of people, it's about the ones that is here, that's the ones that need to be here. So I'm not worried about lots of people who comes, who doesn't go. If it serves them, if it's the right thing, people will come for a reason that we haven't clarified yet. So that's why I'm trying to give it a bit of clarity. So we got a framework in what we're actually busy doing.
But what you're doing now is happening all over the planet. We've got a lot more people putting out conscious content out on TikTok, Facebook, all these platforms. And that's how the consciousness is growing.
Yeah, at the moment there's so much out there. It's overwhelming, really. So I don't really see myself having to make any more content for entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, don't care. I don't want to entertain people. So, but I want to dig down and I want to understand it, and I don't want to miss the bus or the train in this case. I definitely don't want to miss that train. So, like, how do I get on it, stay on it? And I need help with that, and I need other people's view of how they see it and their mirrors. So that's why this is actually very important to me on many levels.
There's two trends, like you were saying. The one, you can label fear. All the people that choose to live in a world dominated by fear or run by fear. And the other trend is the people who prefer to live in a world based on love, unconditional love. Not just for themselves, but for the whole planet, everything on it. So that's what this trend. I've heard or read that people say once you're conscious, you can't go back. Once once you've seen what it is to be conscious, you can't go back to that of love. It's not energetically possible. Almost.
Yeah, that's the big question. Are we back, or are we tolerating things?
Yeah.
What I've noticed about myself, I tolerate a lot. Because wake up in the morning, well, I'm still in 3D. Here we go. One more time with feeling.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Do you do that with joy in your heart or with a negative?
That's the rub. That's where it comes in.
Yes.
Do I wake up with joy? What is joy? Do I love people? Do I love nature? Do I love? That's why I'm going down this road. What is love? Really? Am I like, oh, I love this thing, it's so pretty. Oh, I love you. You say like it's like, or like, what is this thing love? How do I experience it? How do I express it? I know from the highest level, because once you awaken to whatever you sensed real,
Yeah.
the love is part of it, then it's like, okay, how do I embody this? What do I believe? How do I wake up?
It's by changing your state of mind. You've got a choice in the morning you can get up.
Mhm.
Either you're going to have a positive day or a negative day.
Mhm.
Positive problems. Choice is yours.
Yeah.
And that's every moment of the day. You can get a choice. Well, I'm going to do this in positive, with a positive outcome. Or am I going to go back to the negative and just get the negative run its course? Choice is yours. And that's what it comes down. Each individual.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It's more than that, though. I mean, Ari, I think you're asking really good questions, and I'm right with you on that. In terms of going, I don't know what timelines we're dealing with, but I'm definitely on board, and I want to experience my humanness and my own evolution to the end of my potential and possibility. So, and yes, I do think there is value in the spectrum of love and fear, but I think you know me, I'm always going to come down to the nuts and bolts and how do we actually change? How do we make differences? And one is I think we're going to have to start genuinely changing our habits, like actually stop tolerating and start making deep, lasting changes that are in alignment with what it is that we're looking at. And I think the only way I know how to get there is by working with the Kundalini energy. Because when we bring, so if we take love and fear as two levels of the spectrum, for me, more than that is we have the masculine and the feminine. And just trying to bring those two in balance within ourselves is hard work. I mean, that's a lifetime of work. But if we just take the intelligence of the masculine and feminine in whatever form you want, whether that's the sun and the moon, or I mean, you can look at it in a million different ways. But for me, that the process of bringing the masculine and feminine into balance as the mature masculine and the mature feminine, and then being able to draw them into the center, into Sushumna Nadi, which is where, in my opinion, just for the ease of language, God sits. And if we can rise up through that place that God sits in, then surely that is the only doorway to real, I don't want to say enlightenment, but into our ability to transcend matter as we know it. And our ability to move through, because as we move through each chakra and we lift, we're moving towards something different. And if when we leave our crown, we've got to be in a different dimension, we've got to be somewhere different. So for me, that's where I would put my energy, is in working with one's kundalini, one's own kundalini energy, and getting the masculine and feminine into balance. I can't understand any other way it would be possible. Does that make sense to you at all?
Yeah, because what's nice about the masculine and feminine, it's like, well, it's still got negative connotations, way too much. But let's say balanced masculine and feminine. And that's
Yeah.
been like the whole woke thing and the trans thing and that whole movement's also very, very interesting. Because on a higher level, what's happening there is that people are becoming fluid in their masculine and their feminine, and then combining their masculine and their feminine. But it's also just been ripped so far apart and distorted. It's very sad that people are taking that physically and doing serious damage to their body instead of understanding the higher play of that. But then the question is, what is the balanced feminine? What is the balanced masculine? Where can I look to find that? I'll make this one. Okay, I'll go personal on this one. Okay, so if I look at the world, where do I see that embodied? But remember, I'm also seeing through my lens and my filters. So is my balanced masculine, my balanced feminine balanced? Or are they skewed through my filters? Because my perception of toxic masculinity and toxic femininity, which can be a lot more toxic actually, and how that interplay is happening. Once again, back to the pendulum, if we just take feminine on the one side, there's like way too much, way too little. So we have to find the balance again. So what is the balance feminine, balanced masculine? Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would draw it up differently. I would have a square with the immature masculine and the immature feminine, and the mature masculine and the mature feminine. And I mean, for what we're talking about, you can't even be in the playing field of the immature masculine and feminine. You have to be in the mature. And I'm not in agreement with you about the whole woke and sexual fluidity thing, because the people that I'm encountering that are in those fields are not in the mature masculine and feminine. The people that I'm seeing are coming from a lot of wounding, not a lot of resolution. So while the idea of it might be one thing, I don't think the reality is happening in the world at all. I think there's a terrible lack of consciousness in that particular arena. And that's why I think it's so challenging that it's taking the limelight like it is, because it's for me, it's completely throwing the spotlight onto something in the wrong place. Because I just want to bring a picture to it, so that if we have the masculine and the feminine, and I'm only talking about the mature masculine and feminine, and they start blending together and coming into Shushumna Nadi, what happens is we go from two elements which join together and create a third, very much like that symbol, that Celtic knot that I used in that one group. Because what happens then when we take these two energies, because that's what they are, and bring them into balance and because something different happens when they join together and come into Shushumna Nadi. A third element is born, and that element transcends, in my opinion, what we know human to be. I think at that point, I think it becomes multi-dimensional instead of just three.
Oh, just on the masculine feminine, you can't have balance without having both health. Understanding our feminine side, understanding our masculine side. As she explained, when those two come together, that you find the balance between both. In both.
It's also embodying that. So how do I embody my feminine? How do I embody my masculine? Because for me, I don't see myself as very masculine, but when actually look at myself, like boost masculine.
It's got nothing to do with that. I think it's about the feminine energy. It's about energy.
Mm.
And you have both. It's where you find the balance between the two. Yes, some people prefer to work more in the feminine energy than the masculine.
Mm.
There don't need to be a complete balance between both.
Yeah, it's
You
always
work
going to be
more on the
dynamic.
one, but when you need to fall onto the masculine for protection or setting good boundaries or whatever, you've got that side.
We're trying to simplify this and bring some clarity to the whole idea, but that just probably went out the window very quickly. So,
Now, Harry, I think you've actually asked really, really important questions today. I mean, you've certainly got me thinking hugely. Like, what is it that we should be doing? Like, in terms of not just looking to people that we think have got answers, but what are our own answers? I think, like, for me, you're stirring the pot in the right way. And I know it's chaos, but it's great chaos.
great, thank you. Because that's why I'm also trying to keep pointing back to remembering and not having anything out there, no master, no method, no guru.
Yeah.
But except for yourself, your highest guru, your highest self, your inner, listening to the small, still inner voice, coming back to ourselves, having that silence, calming the mind, being able to look at the different bodies, understand them, the different senses, feel them, embody them. And the embodiment is on all the levels, especially the first four that we're working with. So if we're going to go into fourth density, so we're clearly working up until the energetic and astral body is now. So the main work that we're dealing with is the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the energetic levels, because that's the fourth density work.
Yeah.
All the other stuff, yes, it can go all over this matrix, and we can have a look at all of that, but we want to mainly look at that where we are. Well, actually, firstly, we want to get where we are. Yeah. We want to get into 3D first. And I think that feels important for me. It's like, how can I be in 3D properly? So how can I incorporate and embody and enliven and understand and accept and express and experience all the levels from the mineral? And that's once again where AI comes in, the silicon. So now we're having a discussion and a connection, conscious connection with silicon. That's density one, first density. Second density, animals, plants, all those kind of things. Yeah, so there's different states of consciousness.
Yeah.
Okay. And you experience it in different ways.
Yeah.
Then it's also having a good look at relationships and romantic relationship, love, all that kind of stuff. What is that all about? When I go into that kind of relationship, in a romantic relationship, is actually what blocks half of my, or a lot of my spiritual development. And it shouldn't be. Now there's the dichotomy and paradox for you. So by being in a personal romantic relationship should, at least for one, bring up a mirror for you, bring up all your shadows. You should be able to see your reflection in that and work through it and all that kind of stuff. I get that totally. Let's call it the 2 half full glasses kind of seeing of the relationship. you fulfill me, you do something for me, you fill a hole in my life, you entertain me, you whatever it is, you support me, you entertain me, there's that half kind of relationship bias, where theoretically we should be the two cups overflowing. Because it's a choice to share. It shouldn't be from a pain body thing or a need as like, if I don't have somebody in my life, I'm going to be nowhere or whatever. We take that into all things then, not just that. So once again, that umbrella balance of not just the dualistic seesaw balance, but the whole umbrella balance of trying to find that pivot point where we are at all levels in all relationships, family, friends, societal, business partners, all that. Everything is involved in that balance. Because I think to bring it back to the shift thing is if we're moving into social memory complexes or collectives, we're going to have to clear out a lot of that work before we can truly connect. So it's hard enough for me to connect to myself. Never mind for me to connect to one other person. Never mind me connecting to 5 or 6 or 10 or 100 or 1,000,000 people, or theoretically into 8 billion people. We have to connect on all levels. If we take it that we're transcending and we're all getting harvested as a planet as a whole, we have to come into harmony and unity with 8 billion other uses. Now, if you look around, you see how far are we from that? Yeah, well, we're not shifting for a long time. Trying to make a very complex, very dynamic system and trying to bring some clarity or some way of embodying and making it practical and living it is basically, from my side, why I'm here. I'm looking at you as a community to reflect, to question, to share, to answer. Does it help?
I think it's really valuable, Ari. I mean, I'm just, and I'm just listening to what you just said about relationships and, obviously being in relationship with self and then having to go into other relationships. But I mean, I'm just looking at this table that you've got and going just on those 3 levels of fear, uncertainty, and doubt is a lifetime of work. I mean, like in terms of the question that you asked earlier on, of how do we do this? How do we practically do that? I think just tackling those 3 blocks is a massive, massive starting point. Because if we don't master them, we can't go anywhere else.